All right, welcome back to the Veterinary Ledger Podcast. Here we turn numbers into decisions and help practice owners build clarity, confidence, and lasting success. We're happy to have Keith and Lauren True here today. Just launched a practice here, so I'm just happy to get a few minutes of their time. A lot to ask and explore with them. We always like to start. Tell us about True Vet, this most recent opportunity. How did we get here, and why did we get here?
Yeah, thanks for having us on the podcast. Well, we got here after exiting from some partnerships previously in a few other hospitals and decided that it was time to go off on our own and do something. And I took some time after exiting those practices to really figure out what it is that we wanted to do. And, after 7 years of building, these other practices, I really found that my passion was, not just working in veterinary medicine at the practice level, but also working in creating new leaders and empowering others to get into ownership and partnership. And, we launched True Vet not just as a modern way of practicing veterinary medicine, but also as a platform for training, educating, and empowering the next generation of veterinary owners. So while this is the first location that we're doing, it aims to be a platform for not only for our business to grow, but to help others grow businesses of their own too. So we're really excited. And, Lauren has been a huge supporter of me during the growing of my other practices. And it only made sense to kind of do these together now. And we're obviously in the early stages now, but very excited to be getting this going.
So you guys have come so far, I feel like so quickly. I mean, we just joined you guys, but how long did it take you to kind of get to where you wanted to be, doors open, from the idea to doors open?
That's a good question. I mean, I exited in December of 2023, and we opened in August of 2025. So, Lauren, I think did we sign the lease in January of 2025, I believe?
Yeah, it was February of 25. So pretty quickly, we found a good build out team to help us, build out pretty quickly. I think from start to finish, the build out was about 10 weeks, which was pretty impressive.
I mean, You just said you took a break. That sounds like you had a cup of coffee on January 2nd, and after, we're like, you know what? We got to get back on this and build something completely better and different. I mean, how long was that?
A year. It was about a year.
It was a year. Yeah. So 2023 to 2025. So I call it my mini retirement. So mid-career retirement, but it took some time, to get over the hump of exiting and then trying to figure out what it was that we wanted to do next that wasn't the exact same thing, was something a little bit different and was very, mission and vision driven in order to get there.
And how do you see accomplishing that vision? Because it's so powerful and impactful. I feel like we live at an information age. There's so much at your fingertips with training and seminars or just on leadership, management, best practice, whatever it may be. But still, it doesn't get applied perfectly or well enough, or there's not still enough attention to it. So how do you go about building a platform that truly develops leaders that can own and operate successful practices?
I think it comes to identifying the gap. I was lucky enough to have some business lectures during veterinary school, and I think even luckier to be mentored by some of the, not just best veterinarians, but best entrepreneurs I know in the veterinary industry. And the conversations that I had during veterinary school, not many of them centered around entrepreneurship or business ownership in general. And I think we're doing a disservice to the industry and to the profession as itself by not having those conversations, because we see a ton of outside investment coming into this industry and to practice in general. It's a great thing to be investing in. So we need to be talking about that with veterinary students and educating them on what entrepreneurship is, the pros and the cons, the hardships and the excitement of entrepreneurship, but also how to do even the simplest things, how to manage a book, how to lead teams. And, when you finish vet school and you're like, well, I know how to practice medicine, but I wouldn't even know where to begin in running, starting, buying a practice. I think we have that opportunity to not just fill the gaps in that educational part, but also to work as empowerment. I think that's the first thing. Like when it comes to entrepreneurship, you need to have somebody who believes in yourself more, believes in you more, you believe in yourself, and to be the one to kind of push you off the edge of into the abyss of entrepreneurship and that excitement of entrepreneurship. And I think that's what we're trying to do. It's not just provide the education, but it provide the empowerment for you to take the step and make it happen, and then guide you along the way.
Well, mentorship is a huge part of it too, right? Because you come out, you know how to spay a cat, but you can't read a P&L, you know nothing about HR, right? And here, if you ever want to get ahead, you've got to run this business. And that's kind of where things go off the rails sometimes, I think. So was Lauren the one that pushed you, or was there somebody else that pushed you off the edge in a good way?
Lauren, I'll let you take that one.
I would say he had all of the ideas, and it was a lot of okay, let's reel him in a little bit, and one idea at a time, because he's definitely the idea guy in the group. So he comes up with pretty crazy stuff, and every podcast he's on or every podcast he listens to, he's like, "Oh, I thought of a new idea. What if we tried that? What if we tried that?" So I've kind of had to reel him in a little bit, but after a while, I think we needed something tangible. So we have, he had a lot of ideas, and it's really exciting to have our first clinic and start trying some of the ideas and see how they work. And if they don't work, how we pivot through some of those issues that we're having. So
I think she's totally right on the ideas person. Some might call it visionary, some might call it ADHD. I don't know what the term is on that, but I think it's probably a little bit of both. I think the push wasn't necessary. I think the push was always there. I got my first partnership when I was a year out of veterinary school, and that was empowered. I was empowered by and granted opportunities through my performance from my mentors that I worked for. So, I think the push was always there. It just came to that was the right time, and I got the permission as a family, we decided, all right, it makes sense for you to leave your partnerships now. It makes sense to, take some time off and, kind of let your non-competes expire and be able to branch out. It's like, yeah, I was a minority partner in 2 practices. So, the payout I got was decent for the time where we're at, but that money doesn't last you forever. So it does come down to being a family decision of, what you're going to be able to do and the risk profile you're going to be able to take on in order to be able to achieve the vision and the mission and the big picture of what you're trying to do. So it's like, we're right in that thick of that where, this was a family decision. It was, something that we, do take a roll of the dice of, when we go out and, I think, just opening one practice is a risk, but I think a very safe investment is in the realm of big picture things and what veterinary practice investment looks like. But yeah, I think it wasn't so much that I needed to push, but I needed the support from the family in order to make it happen.
You've had so many experiences just in what you just said. I mean, you said a year out of vet school and you're already getting into practice ownership. So that takes a framework and an ability an appetite to want to dive right in. And then you operated as a minority owner. What did that shift? Was there a shift, or was it you always just felt like you were the majority guy? Going from a minority owner to being the sole majority, is there a different approach you take between the two kind of ownership percentages?
Yeah, I don't think it changed how I practiced or how I ran a business. Our group that we had, when we were independent, we had 11 practices. So, the practice I took over out of vet school was an acquisition that was, a practice that wasn't doing stellar by any means financially. And I kind of volunteered as tribute to take that practice over sight unseen. So, while I was a minority owner in that practice, didn't source the deal myself, I took it over and was the vet who took that project and took it from a 1-doctor practice and what was me, and grew it to a 6.5 doctor practice and moved it to a brand new building. So I always felt like I was operating as the sole owner. Yes, able to have mentorship and guidance along the way and have some back office support. in that endeavor, which did exit. But hey, when you're taking out a loan at 27 years of age and already have a ton of student debt, you're still, it still weighs on you, but now it's looking back on it, you're like, wow, my risk profile back then was so much lower than what it is now. But now I have the appetite for it. And the decision to partner early on, again, family decision, and it paid off really well. And it allowed me to, even from the salary and the draws I was taking every year, which is something I talk to veterinary students about, that even minority partners practice that you help grow can make you earn more money than you ever thought you would as a veterinarian. And I just don't think that's talked about enough, but it's something that we need to talk about because, at the end of the day, I don't care what people do with their money, especially veterinarians, but I'd rather see it in the hands of those that are earning and doing the work, rather than just numbers. So I think we need to normalize those conversations a little bit too.
Huge. And Lauren, for you and Keith, you're at the dinner table, and clearly you're always, it feels like, analyzing opportunities and transactions. Forgetting numbers, is there like a standard you look for in an opportunity, a practice that you're looking to acquire? Is it has to be this location, this footprint? Like, you have a 1 or 3 or 5 list of like the absolutes outside of the financial statements?
I think for us, it's more of the feels. As somebody pointed out to me the other day, I'm a vibes kind of girl. I walk into a place and I was like, the vibes are right. We're going to hang out. We're going to have a good time. So I think it's like our gut feeling. And I think women especially have a different type of a gut feeling than men have. And Keith and I have, he'll walk in and be like, this place looks great. This place, I'm like, vibes are off. This isn't it for us. So, there's been a couple times where, just based off of what he's told me, whether it's about a specific opportunity or specific clinic, we haven't moved forward. So far, I think we're doing okay. Most of the opportunities we've taken have paid off, and we'll see how TrueVet continues along. We're 2 months into it. So far, I think we're going well.
And I think for, opportunities and acquisition opportunities that we look for, I think what we're looking for are kind of the legacy plays. There are so many of these, smaller practices that have, great legacy, and, those owners want to see that practice continue. Obviously we have to look at numbers when we look at opportunities. I mean, at the end of the day, it's still a business, and we can't just buy off of the over loan, but we want to be able to buy practices, create opportunity for, new owners as well, and, still preserve legacy. There's still changes that are going to have to be made to make that business grow, and I don't think anybody buys a business for it to stagnate for the entirety of that practice being in business. But, it has to have a solid foundation, a good culture, good standing within the community, a decent building to be working out of. Not everything we can take is going to be a turnaround opportunity. As much as I love, having a couple of those opportunities to do that, it is a lot of work to get those ones turned around. So a solid foundation, good vibes, and decent financials, and just ability to grow, so growth potential is obviously huge for, what we're trying to accomplish too.
And so I know we're trying to scale this, right? So just 2 months in, super brand new early. Even in these 2 months, has there been anything that you're like, oh, we're not going to do that again? Have we had any big revelations of like, maybe not?
Yeah. So I think going along the lines of, we've had some hiccups, with like very much one, but focused on utilizing some smaller companies that we could kind of have some influence on and help them kind of tailor some of their products to what we wanted to. We use a smaller lab company. They sold, got acquired. Used another company for in-house labs. We're having issues with them. So, there is something to be said of trying too many new things at once versus, taking some of what you had in the past that's worked well and flipping that upside down. Maybe not the smartest idea to do that, but, you got to take some chances. I don't What doesn't excite me is just building a general run-of-the-mill veterinary practice. I want to try new things, put new technologies in there, try new PIN systems, try new ways of doing workflows. I think that's where the innovation and the excitement really comes with the startup game is you can try anything that you want, but sometimes as the ideas guy, sometimes you throw too many ideas and, only a couple are really going to stick, but you pivot and you work things through.
Yeah.
Laura, I think we have to touch a little bit on, what hiring looks like in a startup environment where you don't have a testing ground. Do you want to hit on that a little bit?
Yeah, it's been interesting having an entire new staff group who has never worked together. So it's been interesting. And, I wrote an employee handbook with the help of Megan, this past summer for the first time ever. So, I made an addendum today. So because we're not very clear, apparently. So, yeah, so it's definitely been interesting trying to get everybody working together who's never worked together before and not even getting a way to test them even for a hour-long interview. So moving forward, now we have a space to bring them in so we can do a working interview, which is part of the reason we pushed for this clinic to open. So we could test some of Keith's ideas. We can bring in some staff that we can trust and potentially move them to other locations if necessary and get our base solid and tested. So
I think leadership comes into that a lot too, is when you're doing a startup, I consider myself very out of my whole MBA program. I truly believe that the leadership component of running a business, yes, everything else is important, but in order to grow that thing, you have to be a leader and get people to believe in what you're building. And I think one thing that I've seen that is difficult is just something that maybe I didn't account for is you do need to focus on that leadership component of everything as a business owner, even through the stresses of the startup phase and, okay, are we making enough to make payroll? Are we doing all these things? Because that does really weigh on you as a leader and might direct or dictate kind of where your mind is going. And you're not always thinking clearly on certain things, on how a leader or how a CEO would work. So that's something that I think I'm trying to rewire my brain on a little bit and make sure that I'm taking time for those leadership and, in those conversations in order to really take it from just your, a startup practice to something that's creating a movement, creating a platform to scale, to grow and do all those other things. Because I think that leadership component is absolutely central to what we're trying to do as an organization.
We just cut that and just keep that on repeat and replay. There's just so much there. Like with the, you weren't afraid to, try new, you want to create something that hasn't been done before. Let's rip the Band-Aid off and try new things and be totally okay with them going completely sideways and not how you anticipated. It didn't define the outcome for you. You pivoted on a dime, it sounds like, and course corrected. I would think that starts to define the culture that you're building as well, because the staff sees that and they kind of buy into that type of style of what you're building and creating.
Every interview question that I had was centered around innovation, growth mindset, teamwork. And if you're not hiring based off of those things and, you're not getting people who align with that hardwired growth mindset, which is in our core values, in our vision, in our mission statement, then you're never going to grow that practice. You need to have people who are aligned, who are okay trying things that might go sideways completely, and you have to pivot and, you might have to learn a new system, really quickly or whatever. You have to find those people who are aligned with that. Otherwise, it's going to be frustrating for the entirety of their employment and everything too. So
a little bit of alignment before we go. How's married life?
great. Yeah.
Are we finding time? Have you figured out how to kind of separate the two?
Not quite, but we're only 2 months in. So I feel like all of our conversations are about the business and, things that we need to change or update. But luckily we just got back from a lovely trip that we were able to talk about other things on. So
Lauren and I are, are in our mid-30s, have already been together for over half of our lives. We were just high school sweethearts. So this is the first time we've ever worked together. So it's, you find yourself sitting on the couch at night, and then it's like you're talking about something at work. It's like, all right, we need to have a little separation and how we do this and where we have these conversations, because like you don't want it to consume everything. I think we do talk about it around our 3 kids, because I do want to empower them to be entrepreneurs as well and get comfortable doing those things. So we do talk about things at home, but there has to be a natural separation. I think it's like in Parks and Rec, and in that scene where Leslie and Ben are like, are forbidden from talking about work outside of the property of City Hall. Like, we probably need something like that. But we haven't quite figured that balance out just yet.
As long as we're all still happy, right? As long as everyone's still smiling.
Yeah. Good. Doing good.
I think that's so cool to get the three little ones involved in just hearing and the conversations from afar. Like, they ain't gonna learn that in school. So like, just to grow up in that environment sets them so far ahead of their peers in that setting.
The 4-year-old's doing our QuickBooks, I think.
Yeah, and you'll see him on the next Zoom call. So
As long as he's on payroll, it's okay, right?
yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Keith, Lauren, truly a pleasure to have you on here. I'm super excited to have a front row seat for all of the growth and success that you both and everything you create will have. So thank you for joining the podcast. Always good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, and happy to share anything we can to create more entrepreneurs in this space. And we appreciate everything that you guys have done for us as well.
Where should we find you? If people need to find you, where should they find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I've been on a little quiet recently. I'm going to be in the quiet stages of when you're building a little bit. And then on Instagram as well, I'm kind of doing some content about just the startup phase of the practice. So Dr. Keith True on Instagram and Keith True on LinkedIn is the best place to find me.
Perfect.
Excellent. Thank you both.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Have a good one.